Hello there.
General Kenobi!
And welcome to Arcadia. I'm Ricardo Lopes, or Ricardo Lopez, or however you want to pronounce that, but you probably know me as the first Arcadian, and this is the first video that I'm going to make for this channel about Dungeons & Dragons and any other RPG out there, and also my very first unboxing video, so it's quite a special video. And I decided to start big. So just to give you some context, about a year ago, 2020, in the peak of the pandemic, Blacklist Games, a company I believe in the United States, launched their Kickstarter for a brand new fantasy line of miniatures. And it was a pretty good deal. The Kickstarter was pretty solid. It offered about 70 miniatures for $65 US, and that alone was a pretty good deal already. The thing is, people kept smashing stretch goal after stretch goal, and in the end, with each miniature that was added to the overall pool, it was added for free. So instead of 70 miniatures, we ended up with over 200. This ended up being this. I mean, look at the size of the box. It's just insane. At some point I was even worried about the company, thinking there's no way they can make these many miniatures without altering the price whatsoever. But they did it anyway, and they just got in. So I thought it would be a good time to open these and to have my live reaction with you, so you could tell if you want to get these miniatures as well. And just to make sure that all the important information is in the beginning of the video, I should let you know that Blacklist Games is having currently their second Kickstarter for Lasting Tales. Lasting Tales is an RPG that they are developing, but along with the RPG, which is going to be more of a miniature skirmish game, like miniature wargaming, but along with that game, they are also going to launch Fantasy Series 2, which is the direct sequel to this line of miniatures. About 200 miniatures have been unlocked to this point in time, and the price remains at $75, so it's a very good deal if you want to check it out. If you see along the video that these miniatures are for you, then I'll have links down below in the Underdark for you to follow if you want to check their Kickstarter. Anyway, let's get these babies opened so we can see just out of the bat. The art is amazing in the box. I can show you. I hope it doesn't ruin the focus, but I wish I could draw like this or paint like this. I mean, my line work is decent, but my paint job is not so good. I'm actually very surprised about the packaging. It's not like I was expecting complete garbage, but the miniatures are very neatly packed. So they come into these trays, and they are placed each within its own unique cubicle. You can see that these were custom made, not just a random plastic with holes in which they were placed, because they have the form of the miniatures. And they have these, I'm not sure if you saw me take it, this is a transparent plastic cover just to make sure they weren't dislodged during shipping, which is pretty neat. And well, you have a pretty large amount of miniatures just by looking at this. This is the part where I start behaving like a kid in Christmas. You have right out of the back troglodytes, you have giant rats, you have these purple worm babies, so purple wormlings, I believe, and these are all pretty good. I'm very amazed with the detail that these have, and also a big variety. Just out of the bat, I opened this box and I already have like 30 miniatures here. You have also gargoyles. You have these slimes which come in green translucent plastic, so this is pretty cool. I might give this a wash just to pop the green out, but just pretty solid miniature so far. You also have kobolds and giant spiders, and this is just the first tray, because underneath these there's a second tray of miniatures, and here just the amount of miniatures, and this was the Kickstarter alone, so this is what you got for $65, over 70 miniatures. The rest comes for free basically. And even if it was just this Kickstarter, it was still going to be about what, under $1 per miniature, which is pretty cool. Most of the times the miniatures that I buy are around $3 a miniature, and that's the best case scenario. So you have other monsters. This box seems to be more monster focused, or more humanoid monster focused, I should say. There are orcs, which are pretty cool. They come with these long battle axes. There are also zombies, goblins, gnolls, skeletons. The skeletons are kind of comical. They have these this little cartoony face. And you also have 10 hero miniatures, so miniatures you could use for your players to use. I'm not that much fond of hero miniatures as I am with monsters, because I usually cycle through monsters much quicker, but it's nice to have these options as well. So the basic Kickstarter box alone was pretty cool. I'm not going to show every single miniature because I wouldn't have time for that, but we still have one huge box more to open, and this is huge. I mean, look at this. Like I said, at some point I was surprised, and oh boy, there's a lot of minis there. Okay, this is cool. This is cool. These are much more minis than in the first trays. I mean, I'm quite surprised. I'm going to take the plastic cover just to avoid some reflections, but just admire the amount of miniatures in here. I mean, you have lots of monsters. You have, I'm seeing right here, some werewolves, what seems to be bandits or regular thieves, dire wolves. You have these harpies, which is pretty neat because harpies are a monster that is not, I think I don't remember the last time I saw an official harpy miniature, and these are such an iconic monster. It's a shame that we don't get more harpies to use. And again, the detail of these miniatures is quite surprising, because it's not like I was expecting the miniatures to be complete garbage, but I was aware that I was paying, with all the stretch goals included, about 30 cents a miniature, which is pretty cheap. I wouldn't be able to demand big quality out of Blacklist games for that kind of price, but it's pretty amazing the amount of detail in this harpy. I mean, you can see the individual feathers, you can see these, what seems to be scales in the arms and in the legs. All these recesses and bulges will be gold for any of us who are painting these miniatures to use with washes or to dry brush, and it's pretty amazing. You also have these translucent miniatures, for example, this ghost, kind of like the slime in the first box. You also have bugbears, ghouls, and a big assortment of player characters. I can just cycle them or show them briefly. I'll probably be showing highlights of each individual mini in probably shorts or something over the next days, just if you are curious about one specific mini. Overall, this is, I'm more and more amazed with this. And there's another tray on underneath this one, because of course there is. So as you can see, a huge amount of miniatures on top of the ones that we already got. You can see that there are these unholy knights, which are basically pumped up skeletons. You also have cultists, you have mummies. This is kind of an interesting miniature, though I don't like to use much of the steampunky vibe in my fantasy games. You can see that there's this automaton, which is, it seems to have one single eye, so I can probably transform this into a pumped up Modron or something. It could be pretty cool, and you have 5 of them, which is neat. You also have these banshees, which come into the same kind of translucent plastic as the slime and the ghost before, and you also have this gas serpent, which I believe is an original monster designed by the folks at Blacklist Games, which is cool, because I like to see these kind of unique monsters you wouldn't be able to get anywhere else in these kinds of Kickstarters. And you have lots of other minis. You have gargoyles, you have boars, you have giant fire beetles, which is great. I love these monsters. I was always very fond of giant fire beetles, because it makes me feel like the world is real. It makes me feel like, okay, there are these huge monsters roaming around in the world. There are displacer beasts and dragons and giants and stuff. But yeah, if these were the only monsters going around in the world, humanity would be wiped out pretty quickly. But this shows that there are also little monsters that the regular folks might be able to handle, like these giant farmer beetles just ravaging through farmers' harvests and stuff like that. You also have a lot of humanoid player characters in here. From the most standard races, I can see that there are elves and humans, and out of the entire collection there are only 2 tieflings in 2 dragonborn, or as they call it in their Please Don't Sue Me version, the dragonkin and the demonkin. But those are pretty cool, and the other hero miniatures are also awesome. And by some reason, you also have this innkeeper miniature, just in case you want to have a fight in the middle of a tavern and you want the innkeeper to have a say. Overall, I think these miniatures look great and very versatile. I mean, just in this box alone, you can see that there are dozens or hundreds of adventures to be had and different encounters that you can make. But the crown jewel is the last tray, which I'm not even going to take this out of the box, because the tray itself, it's huge to match the miniatures that come with it. As you can see, there are quite a few number of large miniatures that were announced along with the Kickstarter. You have a full line of elementals. As you can see, you have the fire elemental and the water elemental, which both come in translucent plastic like the slimes and the ghosts before. And you also have this air elemental and the earth elemental. The earth elemental is not translucent, but the air one is. And they're all pretty good. I always disliked the air elemental in the official Icons of the Realms miniature line. It always seemed like very sad, and in here at least it seems a little bit more menacing, and all of those are very cool sculpts. I mean, again, the quality of these miniatures is surprising. In the bigger ones, you can see a little bit more of lack in detail, but the small ones specifically are just gorgeous. You also have a dire bear, you have a shambling mount, a troll. You have these. This is probably the miniature that I like the least. It's supposed to be a naga, but it just has such a cartoony face that I just can't take it seriously. And you also have these demon lord, which is, well, to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed. I mean, it's a very cool mini, but when I heard they were going to make a demon lord, I imagined something more different, more unique. Maybe I just have my expectations too high. In fact, I'm completely sure that that's what happened. The miniature is awesome by itself, the sword is cool, but I don't know, I think maybe I was expecting too much. And then you have the 2 biggest miniatures, 2 huge sized miniatures with a 7.5 by 7.5 centimeter base. Not sure what that is in inches, but you have this giant, which is pretty cool. It doesn't fit into any of the regular giants in the Icons of the Realms, or in the Dungeons and Dragons franchise, really. So maybe I'll just pick this one up and paint him as a unique giant. Probably I'll bring back the Eldritch giants of some most ancient times. And then you have this. Look at the size of this, just so you have a feel. This is a werewolf mini compared to the dragon mini, and the werewolf itself, it's just slightly larger than most humanoid PCs, and the size of the dragon is huge. It's bigger than dragons that I bought from Nolzur's Nolzur's Marvelous Pigments, which is pretty cool. It's a little bit lacking in detail, meaning in unique features, I would say, but the detail itself, like the recesses in the wings and the scales, it's pretty cool. It's going to be pretty handy when I'm about to paint this, and I'm pretty surprised it also doesn't fall within the anatomy of any of the Dungeons and Dragons normal dragons. So I'll probably pick this up and make a unique dragon, like maybe I'll bring back the Gemstones dragons as well, so this could be a ruby dragon easily, or maybe I'll just something unique and completely new entirely. I could make, for example, elemental dragons. This could be an earth or a stone dragon. That would fit. So overall, just to give you my final and summarized overview of the entire line of miniatures, it is not without fault. There are some things that can bug the most veteran collectors of miniatures. For example, the plastic is not the best quality. It will most surely break before it bends, and some of the most veteran of you can also be a little bit turned off by the fact that when there are multiple miniatures of the same species or monster or creature, the pose is always the same, and especially players that are used to miniature wargaming like Warhammer, in which every character kind of has a slightly different pose, the same overall anatomy, it's the same creature, but it has a slightly different pose to give more a feel of individuality for each miniature. Here the poses are always the same because the model is the same. To me, this isn't an issue particularly, but it might bug some of you. I probably will just use the hot water, cold water trick to just slightly bend some parts and give them a little bit of a pose difference. But just overall, I don't mind having these different same miniatures with same poses. I'll probably just paint them differently if I feel the need to have give them a different look. But overall, just aside from these two topics, which I believe are quite minor, the line is amazing, really. Probably the most veteran collectors will also find here many repetitions, many miniatures that they already have, but for people who are just starting to collect miniatures or who are interested in painting miniatures and want to have a big sample to paint, this is amazing. This is over 200 miniatures for a very fair price. I mean, I didn't find prices like this anywhere else. So especially people that are going to start their miniature collection, this is an obvious first choice. It has an amazing bang for buck value, and there's a lot of miniatures, there's a lot of versatility, and also for new dungeon masters or the game masters, these would be very good because it gives you a big assortment of monsters right on your first purchase that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. For example, I've been collecting miniatures for about 3 or 4 years, I believe, and up to this point I collected exactly 2 kobolds, because mostly I buy boxes that I don't know what kind of miniatures are inside, and so I'm always up to my luck. But in this box, I just, out of the blue, I just got 5 new kobolds that I can now use to make a proper encounter with kobolds, which I couldn't previously. So if you're running like Lost Mines of Phandelver or any other starting adventure, you'll probably find in this box most of the monsters that you need for that adventure, or at least the most numerous ones. And it is pretty good. It gives you a great starter set for all of you miniature collectors. My overall review is very positive. The money that I spent on this was far too little to the amount of content that I got, so I'm completely pleased with my purchase. And like I said before in the beginning of the video, Blacklist Games has just launched the second Kickstarter. I shouldn't say just launched, because the Kickstarter launched a few weeks ago and it's almost closing. So if you're interested in this and you think like you'd like to get this box, or you'd like to get the new box that they are trying to kickstart right now, head to their Kickstarter page, because I think it's worth it. I think the value of what you pay for the amount of miniatures that you get is astonishing. If you like this video, if you think the unboxing was cool, just give me a comment in the Underdark down below, just so I know that you like this, so I can keep doing the stuff that you like. And if you feel like it, just subscribe and like the video as well, because it helps small channels like this. If that's something you'd like, I'd also like to invite you to check my social media pages. I'm an artist, comic book author, writer, illustrator, and that stuff, and I usually post a lot of fantasy and D&D related doodles on my Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, though Twitter I don't really understand how that thing works. So look for me, you can search for The First Arcadian, both in Instagram and TikTok. In Twitter it's just First Arcadian because of character limit. And I think that's all for me. I hope to see you around here in Arcadia. See you in the next video.